Ernesto Guevara was born in Argentina on June 14, 1928. Later on, he was given the nickname of Che by Antonio Nico Lopez. Che is a word roughly equivalent to man or hey you, because this was something Ernesto often said. As a child growing up, Che had asthma, and after his grandma died, he was accepted into the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Buenos Aires. He quit school and traveled through Argentina in 1950 alone on his motorcycle for 6 weeks for a 6-week exploration. 2 years later, he went on a second motorcycle trip, spending 7 months traveling through Argentina, Chile, Peru, Colombia, and Venezuela. While in Chile, they visited a copper mine. This is where Che becomes appalled by the poor working conditions. Because the U.S. mining companies ran the mine, he blamed them for the conditions of the workers. This gave him a communistic Marxist view of how politics should work. Communism has a theory or system of social organization based on the holding of a property in common, actual ownership being ascribed to the community as a whole or to the state. After his travels, he went back to school in 1953 and graduated. He specialized in allergies. After getting his degree, he went and worked with Fidel Castro and tried several times to start a revolutionary war. In his last attempt to start a communistic revolutionary war in Bolivia, he was captured and killed on October 9th of 1967.
Che was Fidel Castro's right-hand man in the Cuban Revolution, which started in 1953. Castro and Che met in 1955. That same day, Che joined Castro in the revolution. The July 26th movement was a vanguard revolutionary organization planned and led by Castro and Che. In 1959, the July 26th movement overthrew Fulgencio Batista's dictatorship in Cuba. The movement fought the Batista regime on both rural and urban fronts. The rebel forces of Fidel Castro moved swiftly to seize power throughout the island. Che Guevara led troops into combat against the Cuban army. These troops and Che used guerrilla warfare in battle. Guerrilla warfare is the use of small troops of armed civilians that use military tactics including ambush, sabotage, raids, and the element of surprise. Due to the small troop size, they are extraordinarily mobile and able to dominate a larger and less mobile traditional army because they are able to strike and withdraw very easily. Throughout Che's communistic revolution, he would say, "Hasta la victoria siempre," which translates to "onward to victory." In the July 26th movement, Fidel's troops seized power of the Fortaleza de San Carlos de la Cabana, a military base which was turned into a prison. After the fall of Batista, Guevara was appointed leader of the La Cabana prison and became known as the Butcher of La Cabana. He was given that name because he executed 2,000 people who were only given swift trials. He executed people who he felt were suspicious or he personally disliked. He then wanted to help other countries by fighting for his strong belief that a communistic government was the best way for the people to live by. In 1965, Che went to the Congo to start a communistic revolution. He considered the Congo as the beginning of the revolution he intended to bring all over Africa. This did not work because of the insubordinance, internal fighting, and squabbling of the Congolese forces. He returned to Cuba and decided that Bolivia would be a better place to start a communistic revolutionary war. In 1966, he left Cuba for Bolivia. Che went into Bolivia as a bald man in glasses under the name of Adolfo Mena Gonzalez. Once in Bolivia, he formed a group of Cubans and Bolivians that was named the Nyan Kawazu Guerrillas. He trained them in the art of guerrilla warfare in hopes that they would rise and revolt. Although Che was trying to help the people, he was unable to create a connection with the Bolivian people, which made it harder to grow in numbers. In early 1967, the Bolivian authorities gained information that Che was in their country. Then the hunt was on. He suspected that his own men were becoming informants, but he continued to start the revolution. On October 8, 1967, Che was captured by the Bolivian army. It was said that Che was armed and still had ammo when he was captured. It seemed more like he surrendered. The Bolivian government allowed the CIA to interrogate him, but he wouldn't talk. On October 9, 1967, a Bolivian soldier executed Che Guevara. He was buried in Bolivia, but his remains have recently been moved to Cuba.
Che fought for the people of the lower class. He fought to level the upper and lower classes to give everybody the same chance in life. Che was a Stalinist, which is a person who teaches or spreads the ideas of communism. Today, the Cuban people still look to Che as an iconic symbol of the counterculture worldwide. Since his death, he has become a symbol of the revolutionaries fighting against unjust military dictatorships, of which there were too many in Latin America from the 1960s through the 1990s. Because Che fought against the man, he is now also known as a symbol of freedom against the system. Due to the icon that is Che Guevara, people today use this famous picture of him as a silent way to say, "We are rebels." This picture of Che that is now on t-shirts, posters, and protest banners was called the most famous photograph in the world and a symbol of the 20th century by the Maryland Institute College of Art. Revolutionaries, even if you spend your whole life combating the forces of capitalism, you still might wind up on a t-shirt sold in a store owned by the Gap. Ironically, Che became an iconic symbol, but not in the way he wanted. He wanted to be a voice for the people and of the people, not to help fund capitalism. Even after Che's life, he is still a big ionic symbol because they have decorated their country with him. He is on their stamps, money, on a building, has statues, and is painted on walls. Che is still in the hearts of Cubans today because he spent his life fighting for them and other countries' freedom to be economically and socially equal.